CNAs, we have to train the CNAs. So whatever procedure you're going to delegate to CNA, you have to make sure that that procedure you're going to delegate to the CNA is a procedure that can be delegated, that may be delegated in California. Because the problem we're having is there are certain procedures that can be delegated and certain procedures cannot be delegated to CNAs. So you have to go back to your Nurse Practice Act. Knowing your Nurse Practice Act is very, very important because your Nurse Practice Act is more like your guideline. It's your rules and regulations to tell you what you as a nurse can and cannot do. Because if you go to court, the lawyer is going to pull your Nurse Practice Guideline from California and read it and see what you were doing. Did you go out of your scope of practice? If you go out of your scope of practice, you're on your own. You're on your own. So the scope of practice will be pulled. So you have to know what procedures you can legally delegate and certain things because of the complexity of that. Procedure, you cannot delegate to a CNA. Because in the hospitals, we know in the hospitals, the CNAs do not do tube fitting. But this is a different environment. So the CNAs do a lot more than in the hospitals. Because let's say in special ed, these classes are divided. We have 30, I think 36 schools or 38 schools in Compton Unified. There's only total nurses, we only have 11. We don't have, this is including special ed and general ed. In special ed, we only have 3 nurses. In general ed, they have 8. So even if they said, let's divide the schools, one nurse for each school site, it's not enough. So each nurse still has multiple school sites. And you have, for the ratios, the recommendation, the National Association of School Nurses recommends 750 students to 1 school nurse. There is no way, I'm sure the enrollment in this school is more than 750. And if they have medically fragile students that they have in the classroom, there is no way you would do 750. The recommendation is 1 to 125. 1 nurse to 125 students. But are those students in one place? Most times they're not in one place, they're in several different places. So it means you have to travel. And if the IEP stipulates that the child has to have one-to-one, how can you be one-to-one with 1 student? So what happens to the rest of the students? Who takes care of them? The school districts cannot afford to hire 1 nurse for every student that says one-to-one. It's impossible. Budget constraints. So who do we go to? The CNAs. So we have to train them. So the CNA works under every nurse's license. If there's no registered nurse, there's no CNA in the hospital and everywhere. The LVN same. So you cannot have a lot of LVNs and no RNs. That facility will not be registered. So if they're working under your license, it is your responsibility to make sure that every CNA that you assign and a task has been properly trained.